I'm Michelle Satter, and I'm Director of Feature Film Program for the Sundance Institute. This review, when Hard Eight came out, was written by John Anderson in the Los Angeles Times. And when did I don't see a date on it. But it's by John Anderson, and it's something that I've kept in my wallet. And it'll be probably one of those things that I'll keep in my wallet for a long time, being a huge fan of Paul Anderson's. And it says, for some actors, the perfect role comes early, makes them stars, occasionally makes them headaches. For others, Philip Baker Hall, for instance, it arrives after years of being a well-known face unconnected to name, an actor on the edges of the spotlight and perhaps waiting for and ripening into his ideal character. For Hall, the role of Sidney, an aging, gentlemanly gambler with a heart of Is It Really Gold?, who's the main fascination of Paul Thomas Anderson's Hard Eight. The title we non-crapshooters learn refers obliquely to an 8 rolled with a 4 on each of the dice. Courteous, chivalrous, neatly if not well-dressed, Sidney may be a sucker for betting the Hard Eight, but he's also a survivor, an intelligent professional who dwells on the edge of legitimacy, surrounded by what basically is the scum of the earth. Gambling, we gather, is the flaw that keeps him from being a great man and keeps him a tragic masterpiece. Anderson makes a modern film noir a la John Dahl, The Last Seduction, gives us a mystery, then wraps him in an enigma. Why would the obviously crafty and cultured Sidney virtually adopt the destitute and uninspiring John C. Reilly off the front steps of a Nevada diner, teach him the tricks of his trade, steer him toward a romance with full-time casino waitress, part-time hooker, Clementine, Gwyneth Paltrow in her best role yet, and try to protect him from the clearly malevolent Jimmy, Samuel L. Jackson, we hunger to know. And at the same time, we don't. Anderson, who makes as impressive a directing debut as has been seen in some time, creates a perfectly modulated mystery that doesn't even feel like one. It's a character play, and Hall, Reilly, and Paltrow are so convincingly damaged they take on the properties of fine china. A wrong move, and we're all goners. That Anderson gets himself and us out of this predicament with only the slightest shattering of sensibility is a sign of enormous talent. With some terrific handheld camera work by Robert Elswit, Anderson, who finds unexplored territory in the overfilmed milieu of Nevada's casino land, its sympathetic cinematography. Sidney views Reno as his workplace, not an amusement park. Through such eyes, all that tawdry splendor becomes not just garish but trite. It's far too early to be talking about the year's best this and the year's best that, but if Hard Eight is forgotten when the awards start flying around at the end of '97, it'll be a shame as well as a mystery.
Cigarettes and Coffee showed at the '93 Sundance Film Festival.
John Cooper, who's involved in the film in curating the film festival, saw the short film, and I remember him coming into my office and saying, "You've got to see this film. This is something we're going to show at the festival, and he's a filmmaker you must meet." And I, and he doesn't do that too often. So when I hear that, it's like, give me the film, and I'll see it right away. So I remember seeing Cigarettes and Coffee, and there's something so original about in this short film.
I met a woman named Michelle Satter, who runs the Sundance Lab, which is essentially sort of like 3 weeks where you come up to Utah and you hang out at Redford's sort of little compound, and there's 6 or 7 projects, I think, and each summer. And
we look at about now, and this is in 1998. We look at about 3,000 applications, and we stay open. So it's not just someone who comes recommended or someone who's represented by an agent. We really want to be able to do a kind of outreach that will bring in, voices from all over the country. Out of the applications, we'll invite probably about 400 or so scripts to be submitted to the Institute that we will ultimately consider for the lab. But the criteria is one of certainly looking for the gift in the writing, looking for that sort of spark in the directing.
There's sort of 2 weeks that is devoted to the directing side of things and a week that is devoted to the writing side of things. And in the directing side of things, what you do is you pick 3 scenes, you shoot them on videotape, you rehearse them, prep them, shoot them on videotape, cut them, and show them to everybody that's there. And every couple of days within the 2-week period, they bring up a new set of sort of high-profile directors, sort of really great people. John Schlesinger, Michael Caton-Jones, Frank Oz were all people that came up while we were on the directing side of things. And now most projects that go up there don't have actors attached to their movies, but I was lucky enough to have the 2 actors that I'd written the parts for to take with me up to, my little directing seminar. So I was like, do you, Philip, John, do you guys want to come with me to my little, how do I learn to direct? Which I certainly had all my own theories and everything on how I was going to do this and everything. But what essentially what it's supposed to be is you go up there and you fuck up, and you fuck up better the next day. That was sort of Jeremy Kagan, the artistic director's sort of slogan, which was kind of pretty cool. He was like, look, don't come up here and shoot it how you think you want to shoot it. If you're picking 3 scenes, maybe do that for 1 scene. But for the second scene, shoot it how you think, some insane way to shoot it, because it's videotape and it doesn't cost anything. Take advantage of that, and we'll fuck around with it and mix it up a bit, So Philip and John and I went up, and I think we were all a bit skeptical that when we got up there, I think, I don't know, I can't speak for Philip and John. I know John, actually I speak for John, that he kind of warmed up a little bit to it. I think Philip did too, but I really kind of dug it. It was really kind of good for me, and especially the writing section, where that was after we sort of shot 3 or 4 scenes on videotape. The actors leave, and I sat down with, Richard LaGravenese, Scott Frank, Walter Bernstein was there, Todd Graff, and to sit down with Richard LaGravenese was pretty wonderful, and they just kind of just combed through the script, And I had a very slight experience with film school. It was really terrifying and drastic and terrible, and I just felt like it was a waste of time and money, and it didn't feel like, I felt like I was looking at people who were just resentful of you if you had any kind of talent, But here was this sort of situation where you were faced with people who were really excited if you had any kind of talent and really wanted you to do well, So I felt pretty good about that, I felt like, wow, this is maybe what film school is supposed to be. And it's 3 weeks, and it didn't cost me anything, and they asked me to come, and I get to be here with my actors. So, fuck. And not to mention that, but when you come out of there, you come out with the sort of Sundance seal of approval, which when you go to get financing for your movie means a hell of a lot,
Having not been to film school, I know a lot of people a lot of filmmakers who've been through the lab have gone to NYU, UCLA, a lot of the bigger film schools, and they've said to me, and which I believe, that that the 3 weeks at Sundance, the 3 weeks of this intensive workshop, that they've learned more in the workshop than they've learned over 4 years of a film school. One of the things that is very different probably from film schools is that the resources of Sundance are in terms of the mentors, are at the highest level.
When we went up, we shot the opening coffee shop scene, and we shot the telephone call between John and Sydney. I love you like you're my own son. And we were gonna just sort of shoot the motel scene, believe it or not. And Moira Kelly was up there with another movie, and she's a pretty great actress, she's great fun. I said, would you come over and play Clementine? She said, sure. So I think we never cut that. We never edited it, but because it was just too much stuff. But I just sort of shot like 20 takes of a master, with all of them in the shot. That was just a terrible composition and everything else, but I just wanted to let them run. And I remember there's a lot of improvisation and stuff that actually ended up being in the movie that came from it. That was very helpful. And then we actually sort of went so quickly through some of these scenes that there was time for another one, and Courtney Vance was up there. And I said, hey, would you like to play Jimmy, for one scene? So we shot the scene with Jimmy and Sydney, where Jimmy is threatening him with the gun to sort of the blackmail scene, where he essentially it all breaks loose and he smashes the window and everything else. And we couldn't smash the window, so he just had to open the door real strong, I'm opening the door very strongly now. You must be scared. So that was my experience was pretty great. Did you like it? Do you like it now? Do you like it?
No, it was a positive experience. It was.
You got a bit irritated by Michael Caton Jones, I think.
Well, he was a little irritating. Yeah. Well, he was kind of condescending. He happened to come in on the day we were trying to shoot 16 pages in the motel scene, which was like a little biting off a pretty big hunk, and we weren't really prepared to do that. And he came in and put the hard eye on us on that scene.
Yeah.
Actually, the two exciting moments for me, and this is watching the whole mentor relationship, is he worked really closely with Michael Caton Jones, who was there as an advisor, and there was a rapport that they developed, and where Michael's tough and direct and smart, and and that's probably the best way to communicate with Paul. It was a real, it was an incredible energy that they had for each other, and Michael really responded to Paul, and I think that that Paul got a lot from Michael, and and in terms of specifics, I think a lot of it had to do with with how to, with using camera. And with some of the character work and some of the storytelling work, and it's hard to tell specifically what it, what that was. And the other person that I know was of real value to Paul was John Schlesinger, and and I remember John, coming in kind of tired to the, to the scene, and and watching Paul, and I just saw John light up because he got so excited by what Paul's work as a director. And it's an interesting thing because, like, you get to, through Sundance, I've gotten to watch a lot of directors' work, and you see directors who really have the instincts on their feet for, for making choices, and making the choices that will ultimately give him the choices in the editing room to, to cut it in a scene that, that plays, that, that really represents his vision of the scene. And he had those instincts on his feet. It wasn't, there was a kind of relaxed quality that, that he would come in, and he was, there was a surety, and there's a clarity of his vision. And it was a confidence that he had that made the set such a fun place to be. Because he was able to, to bring the actors in on the process. He was very collaborative with the actors. He was very collaborative with the crew, and everybody had a great time working. And it was very, the energy and the spirit of the set was quite exciting.
I think that everyone kind of, sort of advisors, those people that came up, recognized that it was a really good script, and recognized that I had talented actors, and that I had a sort of, that I had a pretty good sort of sense of what I was doing, and a bit of talent, I think they were more concerned with me about the business side of things, and sort of warning me, like, okay, yeah, you know where to put the camera, and you'll figure that out. You got great actors, and you know how to write and everything else. Let's get over that. We'll deal with the other people up here on that. What you need to worry about is financing and how you get it, and you're going to get fucked, and don't trust anyone and everything else. And that was actually a lot of the sort of advice that I got from a lot of these people, was like, you got to be careful, Paul, we need to protect you and everything else. And I felt actually sort of wonderfully protected by a lot of them, and they've been subsequently very helpful and with advice sort of over the years, of getting the movie made. And when we got into a jam with the editing and everything else, everyone that was at Sundance was very helpful and sort of giving advice in terms of, trying to protect me, and protect the movie. And it was kind of cool to get advice that was real.
First of all, Sundance was, I think for all of us, a pretty positive experience. Michelle Satter and Jeremy Kagan and all the staff there were very supportive of this project. I mean, that's their job. I mean, they invite these people up, and it's their job to be supportive of all the projects. But we felt especially supported, I think. I think Paul is right. Everybody realized that this was a project that was probably going to get made, and that was probably going to be pretty good. I mean, I got that sense from everybody at the administrative level there, especially from Jeremy and Michelle. So we didn't feel like an orphan or anything up there, or we didn't feel that we were sort of, the poor kids on the block. We felt a little blessed up there, I think, that everything was going well. And it was fun to have an opportunity to begin to work with these scenes and to see on their feet what they were like and what was possible. So it was in every way a very positive experience. The film is highly stylized in every aspect of it, but the idea was, through this heightened kind of, through the stylization, was to give this kind of heightened sense of naturalism. I mean, that is what we were going for. And this kind of stylization permits that. When you're working with really superior writing, the writing tends to carry you. The writing allows you to leave the ground and to fly a little bit. It's mysterious. I mean, it is mysterious, and it's it's one of the things that makes good acting exciting for both the performer and also for the audiences if it works. It doesn't always work, and there's no formula for it. If there was a formula for it, every performance would be great, and every movie would be exciting and scintillating, and so there's a lot of unknowns in there. I mean, if you're doing a Paul Thomas Anderson, a role in a Paul Thomas Anderson film, or if you're in a David Mamet play or a Shakespeare play, or any one of a number of other contemporary great playwrights, a lot of your work is done for you, really, and this was true in Sydney. However, how long did it take after Sundance? A year and a half?
Like a year and a half, yeah.
About a year and a half, yeah. Before we actually got to Reno and got to work on it. And for me, it began at that reading that we had. Remember that thing?
Yeah, that reading is on videotape, which I actually periodically go back to.
We had a read through for the Money People. And
you have to understand, I think that this is a very fashionable thing right now, is these table readings, of scripts. And I think there are some actors that they take the opportunity to really show off and go, this is what I'm going to do. But, actors who know that this is not the time to act, but just to kind of, just read it and let's see what's going on here and kind of sort through it all. Usually don't get the job, and the actors know that they should be showing off at these table readings because that will somehow make sense, I think there's always been, I think a read through of the script is a great thing if everybody kind of knows that, look, there's no obligation to play the part right now. You know what I mean? We're just kind of this is actually more for the writer and the director than anything else. Don't you think, Philip? I mean, that kind of reading can be very helpful, I think, to an actor. But just speaking for me,
you're right. Table readings have become very popular, and starting 4 or 5 years ago, I think it's like everybody has to have a table reading these days, and I won't do them. I did that one, but I've had a number of really bad experiences with table readings, and a lot of other actors have too.
Yeah.
It's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Wait a minute now. We're going to start filming this in 6 weeks, so we're having this table reading for these investors.
Yeah.
Now, what will they see?
Yeah.
This is not a theater piece.
Exactly.
We're not up there in costume with a real car and a real helicopter, and we're not breaking this glass. We don't have guns. We're not going to really, even simulate sex. What are we doing? We're reading these lines, and a lot of it in film, as you know, is a lot of quick cuts and a lot of, the narrator has the biggest part when you do these table readings. The guy that's reading the stage directions. He's like, so it's like, what are we doing here?
Right.
So, I'm really trying to fully act the scenes. That's really kind of silly because you don't have the mise en scene there to make that possible. So
they usually don't go well, but from an investor's standpoint, because lack of imagination is a serious trait for many film investors. But I find them helpful, especially if you have good actors who know that, look, you're not doing all that Philip just said, and it's really you can get something from it, from my point of view. But from an investor's point of view, I can see how they could become very panicky, because they don't have an imagination to know that to know that it's just a step. It can be just a small step in the process. It's like going to rehearsal, and an actor rehearses something once, and you give them a direction right away. It's like, everybody calm down.
Yeah.
This is a long haul thing. We're going to be doing this for many months, and it's like I don't know if you've ever been to I'm sure you've been to a rehearsal where after you do it once, a director sort of gives you a direction, and it's like, I can only come at it from a writer's point of view. Like, if I let him into my computer right now to read what I was writing, he'd probably fucking flip out and be like, how the fuck am I going to say this? Like, Well, I got a couple more months to go. This is my process, and I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna figure it out, and it's gonna get better, and it's gonna get worse, and it's gonna get better, and I'm finally gonna get there. And so, but movie investors don't like that. They want it right there in front of them right away, and the creative process is just not really allowed.
In the theater, it's a little different because investors in the theater don't usually come to rehearsals. They don't usually hang around. There may be a producer who represents all the investors, and producers by and large in the theater are sort of on the side of the director and the actors to begin with. Well, it would be true of a good producer in film too. But on the first day of rehearsal in the theater, it is common to everybody sit around the table and read. It's a convention. It doesn't really serve any purpose other really than social, because it is likely that a number of actors will not have met before, and so this is a chance to meet the guy next to you and say, "Oh, this is the lady that I have to kiss 4 times in the course of this play, and
That's
nice
a
to
good
meet
point.
you." And
Yeah.
so it's and usually brunch or breakfast or something is it's very social, and normally, like say if you're doing a play at the Mark Taper Forum. On that first day of rehearsal, the whole staff of the Taper is invited. That's the whole advertising, marketing department, all the crew chiefs. Everybody is invited. So you may have like 200 people at a place like the Taper that has a big staff. They'll all the department heads will be there to see, like, oh, I see, okay, so they've got to have these puppets for this. And they got to make some puppets. Damn. So they're all there to see what the requirements are going to be for them, and the set guy is there. Then there's all these people to see what their future is going to be for the next 6 or 7 weeks. But nothing is riding on it, the way it often is when in these film readings, where there seems to be more riding on it than should be. I've never seen anything changed after a table reading. I've never seen any face that was there the first day that wasn't there the second day. Like, what happened to that actor? Guess the producer didn't like him at the table reading. He's gone. No, I've never seen that in the theater. And then what you do is, when you have that table reading in the morning, you take your lunch break or something, you come back, and the director starts right out blocking the first scenes. So you're right at work within a couple of hours after the table reading. It isn't like a table reading, and then 2 months later, you start filming, you start work on it. You start that day. And the play is written normally. I mean, there isn't that much rewriting that goes on.
Yeah,
from the time
that's a big difference
of the table. So there's a lot of differences in the
going in with a finished script.
Yes.
Something that rarely seems to happen.
Arthur Miller is not going to rewrite Death of a Salesman again.
If you've been a lazy filmmaker, you can really save your ass with a good title score. But I don't think I'd been lazy, so that's why this really works so well to me, is because it really complements and pushes you into the movie. There's so many wonderful memories attached to this movie. I mean, it is my first movie. It's my first fucking movie. I can remember the first day of shooting this movie. It was like, I thought that I would be, really nervous, but I actually sort of, maybe this speaks of the size of my ego, but just something happened where I wasn't nervous. I just suddenly got hit with this wave, and I felt like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my job. This is what I've been waiting to do for 25 years, 24 years. Like, okay, I'm ready. Okay, I'm ready to go. I know exactly what we're going to do. We're going to put the camera here. You're going to go like that. You're going to go like that. And I just was like, it was almost like something else took over me. I was like, fuck, that's right. This is what I was supposed to do, So it was kind of funny. It was cool that way. And anyway, I like to remember all these good things that I'm mentioning here. If you are conscious of an actor wanting to go for props, then you're sort of realizing, why do they have an instinct to go for a prop? Why do they feel like they need a crutch? An unnecessary prop in a scene, and then you've got to decipher, have I done something in the writing that is making them, have I not done my job in the writing that is making them feel like they need a prop, or are they just being sort of insecure with what the scene is? And I think that's a director's job. You don't have many jobs as a director besides really keeping your sense of humor and deciphering stuff like this, like, have I fucked up? Or are they just being a little bit nervous or insecure, resulting in them needing a prop to get through the scene, And I think I spotted with Gwyneth, or I'm pretty good at spotting with an actor, like, you don't need the prop. You're not trusting yourself enough. You're not trusting your face enough. Maybe you're not trusting the words enough. And what usually can come out of that is them having to find some equivalent for touching the prop that is much more interesting, which is a small facial gesture, or something to do with the dialogue that is much more true, much more realistic, much more sort of fascinating to look at than someone sort of fiddling with a coffee cup. There's really nothing more dangerous, I think, than an actor eating in a scene. It's really just distracting from what the scene is about. A scene should never be about food. A scene should be about communication, human communication. What are we trying to say to each other? And what are we trying to get through? Actors, when they try and eat in scenes, are always trying to dodge that. I don't know, unless that's right for the scene, unless it's about an actor dodging the truth. But you're creating situations. It's not like I'm so conscious of that. Like, I'm going to put them in this situation where they're going to be forced to deal with each other. That comes from me forcing myself. You know what I mean? It comes from me forcing myself and finding situations and circumstances where people are forced to talk, forced to get together, forced to confront each other, forced to directly address each other. You set up it's going to come from the writing. I'm going to be there first. I'm there first before the actors are. Do you know? I see this whenever I get into the writing, directing stuff. I know I get kind of on these like little flights of fancy, and I don't know if these pieces connect well. I get really nervous that these pieces connect well, because it's just very fucking hard to describe sometimes. Like I've been there before the actor. I've created the situation what they're ordering. That character is ordering a cup of coffee. He's not ordering a cup of coffee and a fucking hamburger. Do you know what I mean? He's ordering that cup of coffee, and if he'd ordered a hamburger, if I'd written him ordering a hamburger, then I know that I can cheat. You know what I mean? I know I can cheat, and I can have him eating the fucking hamburger. And I can cheat, and I can just cut to the hamburger. Always cut to the hamburger. Instead of, what the fuck is this scene about? What are they trying to say to each other? How is this affecting the story, the plot, the characters? Do you know what I mean? And I think when I'm stripping those things away from myself in writing, trying to discipline myself to find the movie, it then results in you're shooting the scene on the day, and the guy doesn't order a hamburger, so it becomes the scenes become more direct and hopefully simpler in the best possible way. Boy, I don't know if that did that make any fucking sense? I remember very specifically shooting the scene, the "Do you want to fuck me" scene, which is we call it. They did the first rehearsal, just a read through, which generally the first rehearsal is just kind of at a half a speed. You know what I mean? It's not like you say, go do a half speed rehearsal, but just was like, it's early in the morning, it's the first scene of the day that we were shooting, we all had our coffee and our little muffins in our hand. It was like, just go. Just Gwyneth, you're sitting here, and Philip, you walk in and do it. And they walked in, they did it. And they just kind of, with like coffee and muffin in hand and in mouth, like, da-da-da-da. And I said, that's it. I said, there we go. That's it. That's the acting. That's the speed. That's the thing. That's everything. That was my direction, was what just happened is the thing. In other words, we don't need to elevate this. We don't need to bring it down. What just happened is what we want. That was my direction. It was like, good. Okay, now, go. You know? I'll never really have an actor rehearse a scene that isn't going to be in the film, but what I will do is maybe have them back it up 3 or 4 minutes before a scene starts. That's kind of a good thing to do, just so you get like run into it, you know what I mean? And you find a natural sort of progress into the scene, you know? Sort of say like, you know, just improvise some shit that happens 3 or 4 minutes before the scene starts. And what's always interesting is to see which actor leads into the scene as written. You know what I mean? Maybe John Riley's got the first piece of dialogue as written in the script, but maybe Philip will be the one who really gives him a kick into getting into the dialogue. I don't know if I've explained this really clearly or not, but it's always just sort of fun to watch them kind of cat at each other for 3 or 4 minutes before and sort of search and lead to the scene as written. And also, of course, and this is a very standard thing, the tail. You know, so you sort of extend the tail 3 or 4 minutes. Just go like, and just keep running. And usually out of those improvisations, I'll always take stuff and it'll end up in the script and in the movie. Because always great shit, you know. And most actors are used to so much manipulation by directors. They're used to not being spoken to honestly. Do you know what I mean? And when they get that, they're fucking happy because they're usually just so fucking jerked around. And actors, I mean, there's a very famous story of a director, a guy's on a deathbed. It's a very famous story. I won't mention the name of the director or the actors involved, but there's a very famous story of a director calling out to an actor. The actor is on his deathbed. This is the actor's big death scene. And there's an actor in the scene, there's a woman in the scene, and the actor says, okay, everybody ready? And he looks to the actor and he says, your life is over! Action! And now, what the fuck is an actor supposed to do with that, you know? And then there's another very famous story of an actress who had to do a scene where she was in a bar and she poured herself a drink and she looks in the drink and then she takes the drink. She's very sad and somber, and the director says, the answer's not in that bottle! Action! Now, you can't act after you're screamed at and then told to go and behave like you're dying or you're drunk and you're very sorrowful, you know? That's not a director trusting their actor. That's a director trying to be an actor, you know? And that can't happen. I think a director has to fucking just be like so direct and honest, like, oh, that really sucked. You got to do it again. Like, okay, that sucked. Let me do it again. Or that was fucking great. And that was great really does mean that was great. Let's do another one and it could be even greater, or just I want to see it again. They feel like they're being spoken to honestly and not manipulated. They're just going to be there for you. Because they're used to that kind of direction that I just mentioned, which is just bullshit. It's a director wanting to be an actor. And manipulation never fucking got a performance. It really never did. You know, it's like actors off camera who scream and yell for the other actors' benefits to get them to cry. It's like, you know what? You're just you're hurting my ears. You're not making me act better. You know? That's my take on it. Tight but there's tight but aggressive. Is a kind of joke direction, but I think actors get it. It comes from a David Mamet movie. I'm not sure. I think it comes from House of Games. Someone says, "How you feeling?" Tight but aggressive. Good. Let's go. And we would always joke. So all right, tight but aggressive. Let's go. You know, keep it simple. In other words, don't bump into the furniture. Lead with your chin and don't bump into the furniture. Oh, look who came out. Oh, Mark Rance decided to come out. Mark, I got an idea.
Don't you always?
Yes.
What's this one?
You know, as I said that, I thought, man, I wonder what people think when they fucking hear me say that. I got an idea. Why don't we do, for the Sydney track, I'll do the Sydney track. I'll make a list or I'll point around, right? And with this microphone, rough shot and everything, on set, between the musical breaks. Get everybody who was on that fucking movie, starting right here, you know what I mean? To fucking Daniel T.J. Lupi, to Robert Elswit, to Martin, to fucking Lou Carlucci. Just go, yeah, I remember about everybody around here was on it, you know what I mean? And just have all this shit, and we'll do. How many times have you heard the fucking set dresser talk about, yeah, I was up there, blah, 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 blah. Gino was fucking involved in that movie. He won't fucking remember anything, but you know what I'm saying? I'll point out everybody who was up there and get everybody. Let's just test it, Valeria. I'll ask you a couple questions about Sydney. What was your job on Sydney?
I was a production coordinator.
How did you get the job?
Daniel Lupi.
And how did you meet Daniel?
I met Daniel on my very first job in the business as a PA
In Boston?
in Boston on a TV series.
Is that where you met Dan Collins?
Yes.
And Dan Collins was the unit manager on Sydney, as
yes.
well as Boogie Nights and Magnolia.
Yes.
And what was your job as a production coordinator in Reno?
My job was to organize all the accommodations, help Craig with the travel, call sheets, paperwork, whatever the office does, copiers, all that kind of stuff.
Do you remember how long we were up there?
I got up there in January. I was the first one up there because I opened the office.
Right.
And I think we were there until April.
I remember you're like, who the fuck is that guy that just walked in?
You were
That's
so
the
young.
director.
I remember the first day at the office when we were in Reno. I got there and I started working. There was this guy that kept running around the office. He had all this energy and he was kind of running around yelling and stuff. And I was busy doing my work and I was thinking, who is that annoying kid over there? And I was finally, it must be one of our PAs. And I was thinking, I better go talk to him because he's being pretty loud and obnoxious. And finally went over and I was like, Daniel, who the hell is that guy that's making all that noise? He goes, oh, that's the director. And I was like, so that was my first introduction to Paul, and you know what, he hasn't changed that much.
I was the guy who did the budget, and kind of I didn't really deal with him unless it was to do with schedules and stuff. I think we were both a little greener. I mean, Paul had come off doing, I guess, cigarettes and coffee, and I don't know what I'd come off. I think I'd actually come off some decent films. So, but the thing I liked about it was, this was one where there was no one around, so it was kind of it appealed to me. On Sydney, we had very little. It was actually a really fun shoot. It was probably in some ways one of the more fun jobs I've done in years. I mean, in some ways, it's probably more fun than this one. Because I think we had very little money, and it was kind of you had to be far more creative. We had we got an office 5 minutes from a Peppermill casino. So literally, what would happen is, since we shot most of our film at nights, because casinos only let you shoot from 10 till 10 or 10 to 8 in the morning, basically, you'd work in the office during the day. All the crew would come over and hang out in the office because you're so close, and also because they'd use the phones because they didn't have to pay if they came to the office. And then, and at night, it's kind of weird because then you'd shoot at 10 o'clock at night, and then what I would actually do is I'd go to bed about 2 in the morning, wake up about 6, and then go back downstairs on the floor, and they'd still be shooting. So we'd do that.
And do you have a fondest memory or an oddest memory or something that really sticks out when you say, okay, Sydney, what is the thing that you, for good or bad? Nights. Massive nights.
Lots of nights.
Yeah.
Alone in the office because I was on the night shift.
Right.
So it was just me. It was good though because it was really pared down.
Very.
And that was what was good about it.
Yeah.
It was fun though.
What was pared down? How many is that?
It just because the only people in the office were
Luke,
me, Craig, and the office PA, and the office PA was never there because she was always on run. So it was really simple to do things. Either you said yes or you said no. It's either you were able to provide or you weren't. It's and that's all we had.
The core group that's been with Paul the whole time is Daniel Lupi, who was the production manager. Now he's been the line producer in Paul's last 2 films. Craig Markey was on. He was the production coordinator. Now he's a production supervisor, and he's done the last 2 films. Myself, the unit manager, I've been on the 3. Dan Collins, I've been on the 3 films. My wife Valeria, who worked in the office and now who's the script supervisor on Magnolia. Martin Milligan, who's been our on-set dresser all 3 films. And and Robert Elswit, our DP, who gets along. He and Paul have a great working relationship. And Mike Reba, who's the first assistant cameraman. He's been on all 3 pictures with us.
I think the core group on that one, I mean, obviously was Robert Ellsworth, which was funny because when he did Sydney, he'd just done River Wild and he'd done whatever. And I remember at the time I was thinking, oh my God, it's some huge DP. I remember arguing with Paul actually, saying, oh, we're going to have some fucking big DP and he's going to not be able to work with the money we have and the crews we're paying. And actually, Robert did a great job. He was shot that Super 35. And then who else did we have? We had Mark Bridges, who was the costume designer, who now is that co-production designer and costumes. And he did a good job on Sydney. I think he had like $10,000 for a wardrobe budget. So he did good on that.
So on Heartache, worst memory, best memory?
Worst memory, best memory.
The thing you hated most on it?
Let me think. What was horrible about Heartache? There's got to be something. Best memory was actually the whole job. It was definitely, I mean, speak to anyone, speak to like Valeria, anyone, they'll say it was actually a lot of fun. Worst memory? You know what? That was a fun job. I didn't have any bad memories.
I remember Paul got into his head, he wanted this certain car, and he wanted it in green. This Regal. So it wasn't really my job, but he asked me to do it. So I said, okay, I'll start looking for you. So I went to like every used car lot in Reno. Then I just started, no one had this car. I'd bring back like 30 or 40 cars. I kept showing him. He's like, no, it's close. So then I started stopping guys in the street and like, hey, can I use your car for film? He said, no. So then slowly I started working outside of Reno. I go to towns like 10 miles away, then 20 miles away, then 30 miles away. Finally ended up in Sacramento, which is like 2.5, 3 hours away from Reno. And finally I found this car, which I thought Paul liked. So I drove it all the way back. And this is like after 3 weeks. And we're like, we need this car like in 2 days. And I'm starting to panic because I've been checking every lot. I've had ads in the papers all over Nevada. We're looking for this car. I've had friends in Los Angeles check for this car. And I walked down this lot and I found it. So I drove it back. In like 3 hours, the car starts overheating. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if it's going to get there. We have to go over the pass. It starts snowing a little bit when I'm getting over there. I'm like thinking to myself, there's some reason this car shouldn't make it to Reno. So finally get it back to Reno. Paul steps outside and is like, oh my God, it's amazing. He starts jumping up and down like a little kid and gave me a big hug. So it's like, you know what, in 3 weeks, every night I go to bed, I'd be dreaming about trying to find this car. So Paul came out and gave me a hug and said thanks. So it was like, you know what, it was well worth the 3 weeks of anguish trying to find this car. And as a sidebar, we sold it to Daniel Lupi, who was the production manager's gardener. So I still see the car whenever I go and see Daniel. Like once a week, we go over. The gardener shows up, and it's still the same car. So it's pretty funny because we can never escape this green Regal.
At the end of a show, I gave it to my gardener. So I didn't give it to him. I sold it to him actually for a couple $100. So every day he pulls up in the house in Sydney's car. It's got like lawnmowers in the trunk. But anyway, Dan, tell him a Sydney story.
You know, I should have had Al Boone was here.
Al Boone was like the fucking
Our captain, our Teamster captain.
and he was a fucking piece of work. Aye.
He was here on the set.
No,
Yeah.
he's a teamster. So he's nice, but he's crazy. He was once, I remember, he was with his wife, and he was playing the $5 slots, and he'd put like $500 into the slot machine, and basically he walked away to go and get a drink, and some old lady slipped in and put a 5 in and fucking won the jackpot. He was going fucking crazy with his wife.
All the gambling stuff is difficult because every night we just had a block of how many hours we could be on the casino floor in a certain area. So it was usually every morning, like at 7 o'clock, like the pit boss or the manager, the thing is like trying to shoo us off the floor, and Paul's always over in the corner hiding, and we're shooting. I've pulled him aside. I'm talking to him. They're like still shooting, and like they're pushing us off the floor, and like we're doing all these shots, and they're literally everybody's like coming on the floor and starting to gamble, and all these people are starting. But it was that was always every day. It was my headache. It was 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. And the guy's like, you've got to get off the floor. And Paul's like looking at me like 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. So we were always pushing our limit there. The people there were very cool, but every day the gambling stuff was very, very intense. I'd been gamble somewhat, but I really, I learned a lot about the gambling, and I got to be friendly with a couple pit bosses, and they really started showing me like how people cheat, and it was very interesting up there. And I also learned that it is addictive because I remember some nights I'd step out the floor and it'd always be. I remember one night specifically going outside and there's this girl just bawling, and I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Well, I just spent all my rent money. I don't have a dime on me, and you see a lot of. I mean, I saw 4 or 5 cases of that, and you don't think of it. Gambling is addicting until you meet these people. Then what do? You give them $5 and say good luck, but there's not much else you can do. So,
Very quickly, Lou, just off the top of your head, what do you remember from Sydney?
What do I remember from Sydney? The great time we had in the Peppermill Casino gambling, and we just had a great time gambling. Oh, you mean the movie?
For the movie.
How much did you lose?
I won $1,800.
Really?
Absolutely. And I taught Daniel Lupi how to play craps. In fact, we had quite a few people at the craps table. It was great. We were all winning.
What is the technological complexity behind the pants on fire gag in Sydney? How did you do it?
I got to think about that. How the hell did I do that one? I know John loved it.
Yeah.
Boy, I forgot.
There was a wire going down his pants.
We did have a wire. It was trailing a wire. So we had some gel on some cotton, and remind me where I did that. Was that his leg?
Yeah, it was his pocket. It was his front pocket.
Right. Okay. So we had some gel on some cotton and with an igniter, and it just ignited and caused a fire.
Okay.
That was fun.
There you go. Okay. Hey, we're on our way. See, we're getting footage. Here we go.
One great thing about Paul is he is accessible. He doesn't. I mean, right now he's like the hottest director in Hollywood, but you still. I don't think any crew people feel intimidated. If you have a question, you can go up and you can talk to him. So I think Paul. There's something about Paul that is accessible. It's not the distant guy in the chair, the guy who just walks from his trailer, shows up and says rolling and walks and says cut and walks back to his trailer. Paul likes the atmosphere on set. I don't know if it's the chaos or whatever, the energy, but he really pulls the energy from the crew and from the actors. That really, I know when he's tired, like the other day he was very tired. He said, I just want to see, once I get the actors up there and see them going, I'll pull the energy back from them and they'll get me going. So that's something I think everybody can learn from, that you can tap into the energy on set. Even if you're having a down day, like Paul can pull it from other people and really use everybody else to help him, as opposed to, the other way around. A lot of times directors find it that where the crew is very, draining, but I think Paul just does it the other way around. He takes everybody's energy. And Paul really, I think, likes to have like the same, we have this core group, but when he meets people he likes to work with. I mean, from Boogie Nights, we've also brought some other people on, so I think he feels more comfortable with, I don't know if we call it a family, but it's a group that he knows he can depend on and count on. Martin was the president of the Breakfast Club, because we were doing nights in the Peppermill every night, so when you get done with work, it was like 7 or 8 in the morning. So we had one bar that was always open when we got off, and it was called the Fireside. It was kind of this cheesy looking bar with a little fireplace in the middle of the fire. So Martin was kind of the president of the of the Breakfast Club. And everybody go over there in the morning, have a few drinks, or more than a few drinks on some occasions, and just relax after work. So that was always his gig.
Do you work on a motion picture called Sydney? What's up, Stoney?
Come here. You got me off guard, homie. We don't talk about those stories. No, I didn't know. What are you talking about? Everybody's accusing me of being who I am.
What's with the Mustangs? The Mustang Club?
Oh, the Mustang. The Mustang, a little place in Reno.
Is that a whorehouse?
No, it's not a whorehouse. It's actually not even in Reno. It's outside of Carson.
The Mustang Ranch?
Yeah.
What were you doing?
Absolutely nothing. You guys are like putting me on the spot right here.
Well, we're helping you.
Not even. How are you guys helping me?
So who hired you for Sydney?
David Konoff and Daniel Lupi. David Konoff was a decorator, and they had this guy Lloyd, I guess, that was on before me, and
I don't know, something went down. Lloyd left the show, and they called me. And I came out and finished the show off. It's kind of cool. It can be fun. It can be a lot of fun. It can be a hard job. It's a hard job. It's not easy moving a lot of furniture, heavy furniture without wheels. It's making sure that Robert's got room for his camera and he's got room to work in tight situations, and also making sure that the frame is right and continuity with all the stuff in the background, all the furniture, props, everything you see other than the actor. So when it's tight, it's tough because there's equipment in the way and there's people. Everybody's there for one reason, to do the job, and they're all doing it at once because that's the time we're allotted to do it, and it just gets crazy. Sydney was great. Sydney was a lot of fun. Maybe I was younger then and more energetic. Maybe that's why it was so great.
Commentary bias. It's great.
No, it's great. Let's do it.
Good. All right, I'm gonna go out there. Let me point to you. Who else was on that fucking movie?
Are you recording this?
I am indeed.
Ricky, I'm sorry, I'm lost. Rick who?
Oh, Heartache.
No, but which Rick?
Which Rick?
Oh, working. I thought you said
Working,
Rick.
no.
Working on Sydney. It's a dim part of my memory right now. You caught me at a moment when I'm thinking about 3 other things, including putting a lens on the camera. So this is, you have to catch me in a free moment. Let me think about it.
All right.
I'm Valeria Collins. I'm the script supervisor.
No, really.
No, I'm Mike Reeb. I'm the first AC. First assistant cameraman. I'm Robert Ellsworth's sort of right-hand man. I take care of all the equipment, run focus, try and make everything keep working camera-wise. Part 8. I remember running around Reno like a madman for about 5 weeks with 2 assistants who both got sick on me at exactly the same time and left me high and dry one night, all by myself. I remember the casino in Reno. Lots of drinking at the Fireside Lounge. Dan Lupe, Wild Man Dan.
Well, how did you earn that name?
Huh?
How did you earn that name?
How about Dan was the guy buying all the shots of tequila at the bar for everybody after work, trying to get the whole crew destroyed on a work night.
Sounds like you had a plan.
Dan had a
Sounds
plan.
like everybody had a good time.
We did. We had a wonderful time at Heartache.
How difficult was the shoot?
Technically, it was like any other shoot. But it was interesting. I turned down 2 weeks on Waterworld to do that, 5 weeks on that show to make less.
Good choice.
No, I'm glad I did. But
Hey, why have you come back and worked on these others now? You're part of the core team.
Robert, I absolutely love Robert. I love Paul. I mean, I love this group, the whole group, the core group.
How would you characterize it?
Let's put it this way. After the money's all spent and gone, what do you remember? You remember the people and the kind of time you had making the movie. That's what stays with you. And that's why I'm here.
How would you characterize the style of Robert and Paul without including this stuff? Bye-bye.
I don't really feel qualified to come. I mean, they work very well together. They complement each other well. Let's put it that way. You know what I mean? They're not working at odds with each other. They're working with each other. It's like the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, which doesn't always happen.
Well, after watching this, it's kind of hard to imagine them not working together.
I'm not that. I can't think that far in the future. I want to get through today.
Paul's movies have a lot of movement. There's not a lot of static stuff. There's a lot of dialing, a lot of steady cam, a lot of crane work, people walking, He loves I think the gadgetry, like the steady cam, the cranes, any kind of stuff. You can see him, he's like a little kid and he gets with the hot head, I don't know using the cranes. He loves playing with that kind of stuff. So he's very hands-on with that kind of stuff. He likes to see the stuff and touch it and look at it. Yeah, so I think Paul's very so visual. You know, he likes to see the stuff. You know, when you describe it, it's not he's so locked on visually. That's one thing I always notice. We learn, you know, so much better when he goes and looks at it and touches it and feels it. Then he really gets a better idea of things. He comes up with some really interesting shots, and I know Robert's always gets in sync right away, and he's always, I mean, I think he enjoys Paul because Paul does things a lot differently than a lot of other directors and thinks of shots. You know, his shots are a lot more interesting than a standard, you know, camera on sticks. So I think that's why they've worked so well together. It's just that they're good at bouncing ideas off each other. You know, Paul might have kind of a too far out idea, but Robert can take his idea and make it practical. In the same way, you know, they're very good doing that back and forth and thinking of some interesting shots.
The director of photography on Heart 8, he hates to be interviewed.
Yeah?
I gotta ask you what you remember of Heart 8.
What I remember of Heart 8? I remember Paul's haircut. It was a butch. He shaved his head. Unrecognizable. That's my most vivid memory of Heart 8. Paul doesn't need a lot of help in certain areas, and it's just, I guess when he sort of does the same thing. Now, he doesn't do the same things, but I guess maybe we have, or at least I shouldn't say we have similar tastes, but I understand his taste, maybe, after this many films. So it's never a surprise. I mean, I kind of can anticipate what he wants to do for the most part, so. But that's just probably from doing, you know, 2 films before this one. It's just easy to predict what he likes, pretty much. Not that he's predictable, but it's lots of it goes contrary to what most people would think is, you know, lots of it really does go contrary to what most people do, or most people expect shots or setups to look like or be. And you can sort of see that just by looking at his movies. So you could actually probably see his movies and then end up on a set with him and pretty much know that things are going to work out a certain way.
Did you feel like, you know, when you were doing Heart 8, did you feel like you already had a visual style for that movie in mind, or were you discovering it?
Oh, he always has a visual style before he starts. Always. I mean, it changes to some extent, but it's completely thought out. Nobody's more prepared. Nobody's really thought through pictorial style as completely as Paul. He's completely, he has a total preconceived idea of what the movie ought to look like, and when it doesn't, and he's able to actually turn around, and it's hard sometimes for him to, if things aren't quite working out, to change, because he does see it so clearly ahead of time. But he really does, and you really can say, you can't have a meeting a month before the movie starts and say, these are the setups for this scene, and they usually are.
So how does he communicate those things?
Grunts. He just grunts. Yeah. He kind of grunts and raises his eyebrows. That's pretty much it. Sometimes he'll sneer, and there's moments when he rolls his eyes, and then occasionally he'll just drop his head and kind of look down at the ground, and then look over, and then kind of close his eyes and grunt again. That's a certain. They're all very specific. Their meanings. It's hard for other people to follow. You have to be very tuned in. I've got it down now, actually. Now, sort of. I can pretty much figure it out. Also, at certain distances, it changes. So it's just a matter, you know, it's just you always have to just be able to catch his eye.
Being a writer-director, Paul, you know, the whole script's in his head. He knows exactly what he wants.
A lot of the times, there's a lot of footage, and you watch it, and you go, oh, you know, it's good, but you're like, it's so long. How are you going to cut this? And then he cuts it, and he cuts it in a way that is it's Paul. Basically, it's quite brilliant what he does with it. You know, I've seen other directors compromise, and you know what? Sometimes their films aren't as good. So maybe it is about. I think occasionally you got to compromise. He does, I mean, he does and he doesn't. I mean, Boogie Nights, when we did that, I mean, that had a budget of like less than 15, and we used to have fucking fights all the time about, you know, how much of a street he can make look period, how many extras he can have, all that. And actually, in that film, he'd listen. You know, it's basically Paul's way or no way, which is probably why he's such a good director. Because he doesn't compromise. And so, you know, some people don't take that.
I'll never forget the first day. We were shooting in a hallway in some hotel in the Pepper Mill. I remember getting there early, and I was getting things all set up, and I saw Paul. And Paul looked a little on the green side, and I went over and I said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh, Dan, I'm so nervous. So I gave him this big hug, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm doing it, if I can do that." You know, Paul had his one moment of crisis right before, and I'm like, "You can do this. I know you can do this. You're gonna do a great job." And he was like, so he took a deep breath, stepped on a set, and did a fantastic job. But I remember seeing him in the hallways first day, and he was just. He was sweating bullets. I know he was scared shitless, but he did a great job.
I think he always had the confidence. I think he now has he changed? He's become fun. You know, he's more. I think he's more mainstream in a sort of in a quirky way. I mean, we're basically making film. We're making a Hollywood movie. When we were making Hard Eight, we weren't making a Hollywood movie. We were making, you know, it was like a small little independent called Sydney. Everyone changes. He's grown up a bit. You know, we're all grown up.
If you alienate the crew, though, no matter what kind of genius you are, if you don't have a good rapport with the crew, which I think Paul always has a good rapport with the crew, and that's what people will go the extra mile for Paul, because they believe in what he's doing and they enjoy working for Paul. So there's usually, I've been on films where there's more grumbling about the director, but with Paul, I think there's less than that. Especially now that he's getting older. I remember on Boogie Nights, Paul would always say to me, "Dan, just give me a camera and give me plenty of film, and I'll just keep shooting." So, but a couple years have passed, so now he's getting a little older and a little wiser. So now it's more. He knows now it's especially in a thing like this, which we're with second unit, we'll go 90, 95 days of shooting. So it's really, you've got to pace yourself anymore. It's Sydney was like a sprint. Sydney and Boogie Nights will equal one Magnolia by the end, and day-wise. We'll be actually more, the first two films, we'll shoot more days on Magnolia than the first two combined. So.
I like that. But there's more. Sundance. So what happened was the following. I had a dupe work print that I'd kind of left in my house by accident. With a work track. And I had a dub made of that, a video dub made of that. And I sent my cut to Sundance, to the film festival. So we took my version up to Sundance, and I had to screen the dupe work print. And actually, if we wanted to get really technical about it, I mean, this is a Super 35 film. You're shooting with flat lenses. And in other words, the squeeze happens at the IP stage, or the IP or IN, I can't remember. But it gets squeezed, and then it becomes anamorphic, and then when you project it through the anamorphic lens, you're all set to go. But this is a flat print. We haven't squeezed it yet, right? So it's a 235 print that hasn't been squeezed yet. So I have to build a special aperture plate. I get Photochem to build me this special aperture plate. So because I'm going to go on a technical rant here, but you'll essentially see the soundtrack. You'll see the soundtrack. If you get the full 235 scope, you'll be seeing this little squiggly white and blue line like down the left-hand side of the frame because you haven't squeezed it yet. So I have to have this special aperture plate made with fucking duct tape on the side of it that covers the soundtrack area. That I've got like 3 of these built, and I'm like carrying them up to Sundance in this little like glass case that I've made to protect it. And like I'm real nervous because the tape is going to melt on the projector. I'm like, fuck, it's going to melt during the middle of the screen and everything else. The soundtrack's gonna show, and luckily the projectionist is a friend of mine, so we got all these little fucking jerry rig on the 235 of this, which actually doesn't really 235. There's a whole little chunk missing because of the soundtrack.
It was painful because I'd seen it under better conditions, and obviously Paul did. So it was a little painful to see it there. Kind of just you want to see your movie presented with the best possible color and the best possible sound and under the best conditions, and it didn't look right there. It didn't sound right. It looked like a kind of an amateurish effort there,
It essentially was a Xerox copy of the movie, because it was a dupe sort of work print. So it was literally like a color Xerox. Anyway, it's a pretty fucking great screening, but it's not finished, And it kind of sucks that it's not finished and everything else. And so it goes well, though, and we get a review in Variety the next day that's great, And we're just like, we just feel like great, The real final straw is I said, give me 60 days to try and sell this movie. I was starting to deal with New Line and Boogie Nights at the time, and New Line was just about to say, yeah, we'll do this for you, we'll buy it. But they didn't. And what happened was, in that 60-day period, my version had been accepted to Cannes, which was this really exciting thing that had happened because you know, it was my dream to take this movie to Cannes. You know, I really wanted to premiere it there. And I said, well, I don't want to go to Cannes with a work print. I don't want to go with this stupid fucking aperture plate that I had to take to Sundance. I want to go, and I want to show this movie in the Palais properly. I knew I was getting a chunk of money from Boogie Nights, and I just wanted to finish it. I knew that I could never sleep at night if I didn't finish this movie. We get the negative. We go to this little warehouse that we had by the Burbank airport. And I said, Barbara, tonight and tomorrow night we're going to fucking re-edit this movie. And we did. In 2 nights, we re-edited back to my version. And we had to totally refigure the movie because when you cut negative, you lose a frame. You know, you lose a frame on either side. So we had to go through the whole movie taking off one frame. We had to go to alternate takes sometimes when they cut into the middle of the Steadicam shots that lead Sydney into the motel and out of the motel. We had to go to alternate takes. That's why one that you see that is in the film ends up out of focus on Philip Baker Hall. It's the second take. Essentially, we had to kind of reconstruct my version of the film, which we did. I mean, this is as fucking close as it could get, you know? I mean, there's some tricky things in there. Here and there are some cuts that are a little off, and it's because of 1 or 2 frame difference. It was actually a really fascinating study in what one frame does. For the most part, you don't fucking notice. You know what I mean? You'll be going along and you're like, wow, okay, that cut still is intact with that 1 frame removal. And then you'll get to 1 and you'll feel the difference. It was really kind of just as a film geek, it was a fascinating study in what a little 1 frame off can do. 90% of the time you won't know it, but there's that little 10% of the time we're like, wow, it's amazing what kind of difference 1 frame can make in a cut. So it was a cool study in that. Anyway, we had 2 nights at the Burbank fucking airport recutting back to my version, and in the meantime had found $200,000 through my own chunk of money that I got from Boogie Nights, and a massive donation from Gwyneth, and a massive donation from Philip and John, and a massive donation from a list of people that I should probably read off. And I have it list. I should read those people off. Yeah. Who gave me money, you know, to finish this off, and it ended up costing about $223,000, and I got Michael Penn at that point, you know, which was a really exciting thing. Karen Rackman was helping me out, and I said, I got to get Michael Penn to do this score. So I met Michael Penn. He did the score, and we did the score and finished the fucking movie and took it to Cannes. So we get to Cannes, and we're like, we made it. Fuck it. If this is the only screening, we're happy. You know, we've got it. And we've got 1 finished print here that says Sydney on it. The trip over to Cannes was really great. I went, and Philip went, and Riley went, and John Lyons, and all of our different wives and friends and everyone else. And John Bryan came over. John Bryan, who did the music, actually was in Europe, coincidentally, touring around with Fiona Apple at the time, and he got to come down and like be with us, and it was great. And we had a fucking blast, and it was like over in an hour and a half. You know, the real party was like an hour and a half long, and it was sitting there watching the finished final print with the score and the mix. That was the happiest part. It was kind of a depression afterwards, actually, right afterwards. We didn't really party the way we thought we would. We were all just like, we made it. We made it. I'm fucking tired, man. I'm fucking tired. And that's really what it was like, you know, because it was one of those silly kind of cliched situations, mix up until the day before you get on the plane and then you carry it on the plane. It was one of those, you know.
Just the excitement of that huge theater and all those people, and there was our movie. You know, it was like it was great. It was an important, exciting moment for all of us. By the way, did Sydney ever play in France or London?
You know what? I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if it ever opened theatrically there.
Because at Deauville, I sat next to the guy who was like the main distributor guy or something for all of Europe. And he loved the movie. And in fact, Altman was sitting on my left with Catherine, and this guy who was running the distribution mafia for all of Europe was on my right. And of course, he knew Altman, so we're all in one group there. And he loved the movie, and he said he couldn't wait to get it open, and he was predicting that it was going to be a big success in Europe. And but then I never heard anything.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know Boogie Nights bombed in France. That's all
Really?
I know. Yeah.
I guess you told me that before. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you'd seen the poster. Anyway, I get back to town, and Samuel Goldwyn, meanwhile, they're like, 60 days is up, fuck it, you haven't sold it, and you've been finishing it, we'll go with your version. I'm like, thank you. They said that, but there's one thing, we gotta call it Hard 8. And I said, no, fuck it, man, I've come too far for you to call this fucking thing Hard 8. There's no way. We're calling it Sydney. It's okay, well, we're going with the other version then, and that's called Hard 8. So we're going with that version. And that's the one I lost. That's the one battle I lost. I said, oh, you got me. I said, okay, Hard 8 it is, I guess. Fuck. So I came all that way and won all those battles, but lost the title. Which I actually learned my lesson on my next movie, Boogie Nights. The opening shot is one long Steadicam shot, and the title is actually in the movie. So it makes it that much harder for them to change the title of the movie if you put the title in the movie. Physically put the title of the movie in your movie, and it's that much harder to cut out. That's the lesson I learned. Oh, fuck. Oh, God, I feel so good for telling that story. I feel like it's over.
Paul Thomas Anderson and Philip Baker Hall were recorded at Westlake Studios in Los Angeles in 1998. Additional interviews were recorded on the set of Magnolia in the winter of 1999. These tracks were produced by Three-Legged Cat Productions, Mark Rance, producer and editor. Additional editing and mixer, Francois Morin.